Welcome back to We're Not Your Typical. Today we had the most amazing James Hunt on the show, also known as Stories About Autism.
He is such an inspiration. We can't wait for you to hear. Enjoy the show. Welcome. We've got James on with us today from Stories About Autism. So we really just wanted to start off with, your story, get to know the boys and just, take it away. Let us know.
Sure. So firstly, thank you for having me. It's really nice to be here and meet you both.
And to you.
Ditto.
Thank you.
So I'm a dad of two boys, Jude, who is 16, and Tommy, who is 13. They are both autistic, both non-speaking, both have various other diagnoses like learning disabilities, anxiety, ADHD, you name it.
The list goes on.
Yes, I was going to say, the list goes on.
We've been through the mill. And I guess what's probably quite unique about our story is Jude and Tommy don't live together. So me and their mum separated about 7 or 8 years ago. And when we did that, we realised that they both needed one-to-one support. They really struggled around each other, which was really difficult for years. So what we decided to do was to separate them, one when one of them was with me, the other's with Charlotte, and we swap over every couple of days. It was a real sort of unique decision. It was one that was very difficult and heartbreaking at the time. And it was supposed to be temporary, but it's actually worked and just become our normal now. It's become something that works for them. And as I say, it's just become our everyday.
So on your social media, obviously you do explain that. But I think as an outsider, and I think maybe other people might agree or be more intrigued as such, it may look like that you both had split because it just wasn't working raising two autistic children. Was that the case? Was it to do with the children? Was it to do with you guys? And obviously, that's personal. You don't need to go into detail. But from your social media as well, you look like you get on really well, which is so lovely, especially for the boys. But do you want to talk a bit more about the whole breakup situation?
Sure.
And
it's a question I get asked a lot, and it's one of those things. Life was very difficult for about 4 or 5 years before that. And there's a lot of stress. And I think relationships break up for a number of reasons, and stress being one of them, life being different than you imagined. We definitely went through quite a difficult period. Jude was not sleeping for years. There was lots of self-injurious behaviours and meltdowns, and that impacts your life, impacts work, impacts everything. And whilst we never broke up because of Jude and Tommy, obviously the impact on our lives, it played a part. And I think we'd come to the decision that we were separating. We were kind of co-parenting for years anyway. I was having to sleep with Jude every night to try and keep him asleep, so we rarely shared a bed in that sense. And life was very different. It wasn't, I guess, what we imagined when we got married and started a relationship. And we, like you said, we are really good friends. We've maintained that ever since. And
I think that's amazing.
it's amazing, especially for the boys as well.
Yeah,
And that you live so close together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we've ended up living opposite each other
which
now.
is amazing.
Charlotte
Likes your fridge.
She does like my fridge.
She likes your Coke.
Yeah, so my house is a bit more stocked up than hers, so she comes in and takes. So about 6-7 years ago, she moved into a house opposite my parents. And that worked because I used to spend a lot of time around there anyway, so it was quite convenient to pick one of the boys up and drop one off and then go to my parents and then go home. And then 3 years ago I moved in to help look after my dad. So
on top of looking after your children that need a lot of one-to-one support, you're also caring for your father.
Exactly, yeah.
Wow.
So initially it was my mum and dad, so dementia and Parkinson's, and for about 5 years, and then my mum moved into a care home 3 years ago, and then my dad needed more support. So rather than, I was trying to manage 2 houses and going back and forth and all the time, and then trying to explain to Jude or Tommy that we need to go back to Nan and Granddad's house. Obviously they want to be at home and the routine, and it just really wasn't working. So we moved in there, which I know you mentioned about moving house. Like, that was a big fear of mine.
That's a massive, massive fear of mine.
It went really well.
Okay.
We did visual routines, did a social story, and I guess they knew the house already, but I wondered how they'd react to that because they used to go in there, coming home again. And we built an annex in the gardens that made it quite different. It meant that they had their space, because that was what before we moved in, I really wanted to make sure there was enough space for them and enough space for me to sort of help my dad and keep it quite separate.
Yeah.
So we ended up living opposite each other. Luckily, we get on.
Yeah, luckily.
Luckily, no. We've always, despite sort of our marriage not working, we've always tried to put the boys first.
Yeah.
So even in the difficult days, sort of the early days afterwards, I think our communication, both our boys are non-speaking, so we had to make sure that we communicate really well every day to know what they've eaten.
Yeah, and work as a team.
Yeah, whether there's been a meltdown, what the trigger was, and that, I guess, helped keep our relationship really good from the beginning.
Definitely shows,
Yeah.
because
You can see
you
that.
can see that on your social media and just within the boys as well.
Yeah.
And the transitions that they obviously have to do every other day or every 2 days. How are they with the transitionings?
Yeah, they seem to transition really well. They like going back and forth. I'd say Tommy is more routine, where he likes to be in certain places on certain days, whereas Jude doesn't mind at all. He'll just go back and forth as and when we need to swap. And yeah, obviously living so close in some ways makes it a lot easier.
Yeah,
There's
it
no travelling. There's no
that
if you
really
forget
helps.
to have uniform clean, there's someone over the road who might have some.
Very helpful.
So yeah, it definitely it's made life easier in many ways. And yeah, I think Jude and Tommy have really sort of flourished through it.
So when there's situations where the boys have to be together, I know you went to Australia recently, hats off to Charlotte for dealing with 4 children, amazing. But when there's times where they may go away or you might go away and the boys have to be together, how are they together?
Nowadays they're a lot better than they were. Like, that's changed. Their relationship has improved massively.
That's really lovely.
I'd say a large part of that is down to school. We've worked really closely with school in the last few years.
Do they go to the same school?
They go to the same school, yeah. And we've worked really closely with them in the last few years of how to improve that relationship. And we decided that what we'd do is part of their school day is they'd spend time together. So, but to begin with, it was to do something fun. So trampolining, sensory room, things that they'd enjoy.
Yeah.
So it'd just be the two of them and the support staff, and try and show them that they can have fun together.
Yeah.
And it might be for 5 minutes and they'd leave, and then it might be for 10 minutes the next day, and just gradually increase that time. And by doing that we've been doing that for years now, that's really helped them. And they've matured. Like Tommy, one of the biggest challenges was Jude really struggles around other kids. He always has done. And in particular, kids who are unpredictable. And Tommy is loud and unpredictable.
Yeah.
Everything Jude doesn't like in the world.
Tommy is.
So they never purposely sort of upset each other. They'd never fight, but Tommy would be himself and Jude couldn't cope with it.
Yeah.
And that was the biggest challenge, is them just being in the same space. But over time, I think they've both matured. They both understand each other a bit more. Tommy's definitely more empathetic than before. And
Do you think also because it's routine based, because they've done it for so long, they kind of know that they're going to do it, so it's just become more of a routine as well?
I think
which
so.
has probably helped.
Yeah, I think like now they sit and have lunch together at school, where Jude never even used to be able to sit in the lunchroom because it was too loud and too overwhelming.
But Tommy's the one that wears ear defenders.
Yes.
And he's the loud one.
So Jude used to wear ear defenders.
Okay.
And he one day just stopped and decided
That's
that's
his
it anymore.
choice.
And as much as I think there'd be a huge benefit to him,
Yeah.
because he does spend a lot of his time like
see,
this,
Yeah.
he just won't put them on again. So, and
I get so proud when they make their decisions themselves like that. I remember when Callie, until 8 months ago, still had a dummy.
yeah,
And there was no way that I could ever get rid of it. And she just said one day, no more.
yeah.
That was it.
So Jude was the same. Jude had a dummy until 7,
Yeah.
I think. And he just used to have it when he came home from school. And it was his real sort of soothing activity. And again, had the same fear. He's never going to give it up. What are we going to do?
Walking around in
And
public with
one
a
day
dummy
he just
in.
stopped, and we
Yeah.
never offered it to him, and he didn't ask for it. And
Amazing.
Thankfully, I got rid of the dummy before I knew that she was
Yeah.
autistic.
Yeah.
So that
Best
would have been easy.
thing.
But now she just
And
bites my clothes.
Tommy never put a dummy in his mouth, ever.
Yeah.
Even as a baby, he'd spit it out and was like, okay, like how different can you be?
Yeah, madness.
Yeah, you've got two completely different boys, haven't you, with
Yeah.
the same diagnosis?
Yeah, which can be difficult for people to understand. And I think, we all know how wide and varied the spectrum is.
Yeah.
But for sort of general public, it can be very difficult to understand. And if you met Jude, you'd have an impression. And if you met Tommy, you'd have an impression. If you met your kids, they'd have an impression. And it's very different.
That's what I find really hard because I'd ask you questions because I think that maybe Bailey's quite like Jude. And then it's like, but they're not. And it's like, if I ask your opinion or did he do this at her age?
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter
You want
because
answers,
but you're never going to get those answers because every child is different.
Yeah.
And that's what I find really hard because if I knew what was going to happen in the future, then I'd be able to manage it, cope with it, process it, deal with it. But it's the not knowing, and it doesn't matter how many people I ask, like, what was your experience with it, whose child's on the spectrum or autistic, I'm never going to know because just because something works or doesn't work for you doesn't mean it's going to work or not work for mine.
Yeah,
That's what I really find so challenging.
And I remember in the early days feeling like that, like I wanted to know, okay, well, if we do this, what will happen? If we do this therapy, what can I do to help Jude and Tommy speak?
Yeah.
And you want some definitive answers. You want to know, if we do this, this will happen by the end of it.
Did you try anything to speak to get them to speak?
Yeah, we've done lots of different therapies and had success with some and not so much with others. And we've tried diets, we've tried supplements, we've tried audio therapies, we've tried all kinds of different things.
I guess you try anything,
wouldn't you?
Yeah.
But yet some of those therapies might have worked for other children.
Yeah, and that's it, and that's why you try them because you go on our friend Google and you see these rave reviews about gluten-free diet and how it's made my kids speak, and you at the time, especially when your kids are a lot younger, you're desperate almost.
Yeah,
of,
of
like,
course
you're
I'm desperate to hear her voice. I'm not going to lie.
To just have some sort of progress, and if it's all you got to do is change your diet, then we're going to do it. Let's
Marley has to be on a gluten-free diet because he's got celiac and his behaviour is through the roof. And everyone said, you just wait. Yeah. Well, I'm still waiting, and it's been about 8 months. Nothing's changed.
We did 6 months of gluten-free, and for about the first month saw, I don't know if it was placebo effect, but you think, oh my God, this is it. Like, we've cracked it.
I think it's because we want it so badly.
But it was just a good month.
Yeah.
And then by month 5 or 6, when you realise there's no difference, we're spending a fortune.
Just about to say,
it's so expensive.
I want some bread. We gave up.
Yeah, fair enough. I have a question, and it's probably a more challenging question to answer because it's the situation you're in. But you come across so kind of strong and positive on your social media, which is really reassuring for lots of parents. But there's going to be times where surely you do have your lows and you do suffer. I think what comes down to it is asking you, are there particular moments where that triggers you to feel that way? Is it, I'm making it up, for example, like because they're non-speaking, you can never communicate. Is there triggers? Because for me, I don't have the triggers, they just come. But I'm wondering whether you have triggers with anything that makes you have your low moments.
I think a lot of it is, firstly, is time. Like I said, my boys are, they're going to be 17 and 14 in the next few weeks. So we've been through a hell of a lot of low moments over time, and probably some of the lowest moments were before I was on social media or back when I first started. The reason I started sharing stories was because I couldn't talk about it. I couldn't explain to my friends and family. I'd get choked up. I couldn't get the words out. And I'd go and meet friends and they'd say, oh, how are the boys? And I'd say, oh, yeah, they're okay, thanks. Yeah. Because I didn't know how in that 2 minutes to try and explain what was going on at home.
2 minutes is not long enough.
No. So I thought, okay, let's write it down because I can do that. I can take my time and explain it, and then they can read it in their own time, and then we can maybe have a conversation next time we see each other. And that's all it was. That was the way of
Well, it's such therapy, isn't it?
It was, yeah. It was therapy for me, as much as it was, helping them understand. And I think, so since then, I mean, firstly, I don't shy away from talking about the hard moments.
No, I've seen you do that.
Yeah, and like last year in particular, last summer was very difficult with Jude.
I remember with your relationship between each other.
Yeah, he, puberty really exploded. We had a medication change. He became very aggressive, and it lasted for months.
What's he on medication for? Sorry.
Anxiety
Okay.
and like aggressive behaviours, and it's in those moments where it's happened a lot before over the years. Like for him, the meltdowns were always quite towards himself, like self-injuring, and that was just heartbreaking. To watch your 5-year-old bouncing on their knees, jumping off the sofa, trying to hurt themselves, hitting radiators with their hands, like just multiple times a day. And you don't, firstly you're like, what the hell is going on? Like how bad a parent must I be for them to be doing this?
Yeah, you always blame yourself.
Exactly, yeah, it must be our fault. And it's only in realising that there's so many other people who go through the same thing that you start to think, okay, well, maybe it's not me, maybe it's not us. And like, life but during those moments when you go through weeks and weeks of that, it's, you feel like everything feels pointless. Like work is unimportant, friends are unimportant. Like what matters, how can you enjoy watching that TV program when you might have a meltdown in a moment? Yeah. And last year it changed because Jude suddenly is the same size as me, and he's 16, is a big boy, and it's a very different to a 5-year-old where you can almost scoop them up and try and keep them safe. So I think that there's lots of difficult moments sort of throughout the journey. And I guess going back to your question of are there triggers, I think the biggest moments are the meltdowns and the sort of impactful ones that are right in front of you. But of course there's plenty of subtle ones, like you see a kid who they used to go to a baby group with going on to do exams, or to you watch them play football or something like that all those little things that come up time and time again. I saw someone describe them once as time goes on they become paper cuts rather than like
big wounds.
Exactly. And where they still sting and they hurt a bit, but it lasts less and it happens less often. And I think me with Jude and Tommy at 5 is very different to me and Jude and Tommy at 16 and 13. And I think that is a sort of process that we all go through as parents.
Sure. You've had the life that you have is a challenging life. You not only carers for your boys, but you're carers for your parents, and obviously your mum's in a home, but she's not your mum that's around the corner to help with the boys when you need her and things like that. And obviously your dad, is he the one that's got Parkinson's? So he's got, you're caring for him too. Where do you find the time for you?
That's what I was going to ask.
Good question. I guess a lot of the time we don't, and that's one of the biggest problems. You mentioned Australia. Like that is something that
must have taken planning.
It did, yeah. So I went to speak at an autism conference out there for an autism charity, and that was, I really didn't think it would be possible because of everything that goes on at home and the changes and stuff. And it worked, and I went, and it was an incredible trip. The boys were great; they coped really well, and I found myself out there with free time.
What did you
do?
A
lot of free time.
Yeah, but it felt so strange because for
but
years
did it feel
I haven't.
Good?
Yes and no. Like yes.
Did you feel guilty?
A little bit of guilt, a little bit. Probably less guilt because I knew the boys were okay.
Yeah.
If they'd have been struggling, it would have been awful.
It's quite far away to just quickly run back.
It's a long, it's a long trip. It just felt so surreal of almost like just not knowing what to do with myself. Like, rather than, so we all get little snippets of free time here and there where, we've got an hour to watch a program or read a book or, go for a walk, and then you go back to everyday life. So to suddenly be like, okay, I've got nothing to do for 3 days, like, where do I start?
Sounds bliss.
It did.
And all you're left with, I feel like as well, all you're left with is your head.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's not the best place to be.
Yeah. So there was a lot of trying to distract myself and going, getting to tour around Sydney and just walk around and see everything was great, But yeah, I think the question was how do you
have time for yourself, looking after everyone? And
I think the way I always try and sort of cope with it is to try and do something every day. And whether that's watching a program for half an hour, whether that's talking to a friend, whether that's going to the gym, whatever it is trying to have something in that day, even if it's the worst day, meltdowns, everything. Like I will stay up once they've gone to bed.
Because
At
that's
3
your
in the
time.
morning.
Exactly, yeah.
What Tommy went to bed at 2 o'clock last night?
I'll have half an hour for myself.
Wow.
Because I need that.
Yeah.
I need that, and that's what. Although I probably could do with that extra sleep, I can also do with having that just no pressure, no.
That's what my husband does every night.
And just have that little bit of time. And I think we're all different. It's finding what works for you. And some people lean heavily on their friends. Some people will have an activity or a sport or something. And it's just it's finding what works for you. And for me, it's just making sure every day I do something.
That's a really nice bit of advice to share with people, because I feel like we all need to hear that.
Yeah, 100%. So to talk to us about, Jude going through puberty, what's it been like? Obviously, because it's very different to a typical child in the sense of, he's not verbal and he can't really express to you like how he's feeling or when he's growing something or I don't want to be vulgar, but what's it like? Has it changed the way he is? Has his moods changed or his
definitely
meltdowns?
Yeah, definitely. It's been an intense sort of year or so, and largely because for Jude, he doesn't really show at least any real level of understanding of it of what's going on. And it's hard to explain to him, the physical changes that are happening, the mental changes that are happening, and so for him, he's almost gone through it without an explanation, and his hormones and mood has gone like that, constantly from day to day. 1 minute he'd be crying, and you're like, what's happened? But then 10 minutes later, he's laughing and happy again, and so that's been tough. He's been working it out himself, which is, I think we've turned the corner with that now, and he seems to be a lot more settled, a lot happier. But it's a strange period, and it leads into what's next for our kids, right?
Yeah, that's also...
he's got 2 years left at school, and so he'll be leaving at 19, and we're starting to look at that, what comes next. So
what does come next?
So as far as where we are, it will be what will be offered is a combination of, there's a SEN college, which I don't think, my gut, that it's going to be right for Jude.
Mm-hmm. Is it local to you?
No, there's nothing local. So everything's a minimum sort of 45 minutes away. So there's a SEN college, which would be a couple of days a week, which again, I don't think is right. There's a combination of day centres for sort of young adults with learning disabilities or autism. And potentially there's having a PA, so having a personal assistant who spends the day with him, either at home or taking him out for the day or going places. So there will be some sort of package that's put together by the council and us trying to figure out what's right for him.
And can you fight for changes if the council said this is what we're going to do, but you knew it wasn't going to be right?
I think as far as from what I've seen and been told by school and seen from some of the kids who have left school already and listened to their parents and what, because that's the best thing is, having a community like this, because you can listen to people who are years ahead of you. And through school, that I've got to know a few parents who their kids are 20, 21 and have been through this. So that's always helpful because, they turn around to you and say, well, when the council says that to you, you don't have to agree with that. You can fight that. So I don't know for definite what's going to be right for him. And again, it's going to come up 3 years later for Tommy, who again is going to be a very different. Yeah,
he's completely different.
Package.
So where are they where's Jude when it comes to education? Mm-hmm. Where level or age would you say that he's at? Why you think that maybe college wouldn't be any good for him?
I'd say that college wouldn't be any good for him purely because I feel like we need to visit it. We haven't visited it, but what we've been explained is it's the kids it might be right for don't seem to fit Jude's profile. And I think for him, it's going to be a huge shift anyway he's been at this school for 15 years.
Wow.
And, again, explaining to him, you're not going to go back there. You're not going to see those people again. How do you
explain that?
I don't know.
Has he got any understanding? If you said to him, you're not going to be going to school in a couple of years and you'll be going off to college or somewhere else.
Jude is very much now.
So you can't explain it. It just happens and you deal with what happens.
Prepare him for it much closer to the time.
Well, you transition him to the next place while still being at school.
school will obviously try and explain to him, I guess in the build up to the last few weeks of what's going on. But yeah, for him, Jude doesn't really have a concept of tomorrow or next week,
future.
or it's all about now. So we don't really talk about things in the future because it's confusing for him, and he thinks it's, are we going now? Like,
out of interest, would you talk about it? Say you and Charlotte were talking, saying, and Jude's in the room, what do you think is going to be right for Jude? Would you talk about things like that in front of him? Like, would he ever know? Because he would understand, or he would take in what he would want to.
He seems to struggle with an overload of information.
Okay. So he does have a bit of understanding, I suppose, if he struggles.
He definitely has understanding on the right things, but
Yeah.
I think when there's too much language, he struggles because he might be a little bit confused and what's being, he picks up much more on tone than on the actual words themselves.
Yeah.
So I think for him, we try and keep things very simple for him, and simple instructions, simple like what's happening next in the day rather than what's
you keep it
next
to
week.
the day.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, I understand that.
And for him, that seems to work for him. That's he's happy. He's happy to get up in the morning and go to school. He's happy to go back and forth between our houses. Like, he didn't need to know I was away for a week.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's very different for Tommy.
Tommy needed a visual schedule and to know.
I saw. So he actually saw the whole week. Mm-hmm. So you can actually do more of the future with Tommy than you can with Jude.
Yeah, so Tommy gets that largely through schedules, and they use that at school with like what's going on this week, and when he goes in the morning, he sort of marks out what day it is, what the weather is, what's happening next. And he loves routine. Tommy loves his sort of work systems at school and working through them and doing all his steps, which is amazing. The downside is when something goes wrong or there's unpredictable, he can really struggle with it.
We're exactly the same with the calendar.
But for him, that really helped when I was away, having that schedule so he could count down every day to when I'm back. Whereas for Jude, if you're meeting Jude's needs, he's happy.
That's how I feel with Bailey. It's kind of like, if I'm there, she wants me and she doesn't want anyone else. But if I'm not there, she's fine.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, when I say goodbye to her, I always think to myself, does she understand that I'm leaving the house?
I used to have to not say bye and leave.
No, but she doesn't mind. Does she think I'm coming back today, tomorrow, the next day? Would she care?
Yeah.
And I actually, not that she wouldn't care, but I think if someone else was meeting the needs that I meet for her, I don't think she would.
Yeah. And I've had all those thoughts. And the same thing with being away. I'm thinking, I wonder what Jude thinks.
Yeah.
Like, it's been 7 days now. Is he
thinking, is Dad coming back? Where's Dad gone?
I'm just gone forever?
Yeah.
I feel like they do.
But you don't. You'll never know.
Of course you don't. It's just my thought. I feel like they do know way more than we think.
Oh, definitely. Like,
yeah.
Jude,
I feel they know. Of course he's going to know you've gone away.
We will talk about those sorts of things in front of him. And, Charlotte will say to him, like, Dad is away for 7 days. We don't know how much he processes it and understands it, but we'll keep it very simple and keep it, and say, like, you're going to see Daddy tomorrow. Or even when he's with me, we go that far ahead, but there's never
there's no evidence that you know what. And also you can say it's like 7 days but did they really know it's 7 days? Do they understand that? Or,
yeah, sure.
And that's what I also struggle with. Like, I don't know what she's actually taking in and what she's not. I need to be in her brain.
Yeah.
And I really struggle with like not knowing, like when she looks at things and like she's laughing at something, I'm like, what are you laughing at?
Yeah.
But saying that, I know obviously she's young, but if you think about a typical 4-year-old and you said Mummy's going away for 7 days, do you think they're going to understand that?
No, but I would FaceTime, and I've done with my other kids when I've been away without them, and they'd be like, oh, Mummy's coming back tomorrow, and they understand what tomorrow is. I feel like if I said to Bailey, we're going there tomorrow, do you want to have a clue?
Yeah.
What were the boys like when you came home?
Ignored me.
No, they do though. They're furious.
Are they angry with you?
No, it wasn't angry at all. So they just literally went straight back into their routines.
Yeah.
And as if I'd been there yesterday.
They made it easy for you.
Yeah, which was lovely. Lovely, and then there was no negatives from it. But
you'd love a little cuddle, like, missed you, Dad.
I did eventually, but it took a while to get a cuddle and some excitement.
Tell me more about, I know obviously you've accepted and it's your life and they are who they are, but the whole non-speaking, non-verbal side, do you still pray that they're going to have
Tommy
words?
Has words, no? Does Tommy, or sounds Tommy has, like when he says, I love you, or...
Yeah, Tommy can say sort of the first syllable of words. He can't seem to connect second or third syllables and make full words. But Tommy understands pretty much everything I say to him. I might need to repeat it now and again, but he seems to have, he's got a much better understanding of language. He uses an AAC device.
So you can have a back and forward conversation, him using the device?
if he wants to.
Okay.
It's always on their terms.
Yeah,
isn't it?
Always.
A lot of the times with the device, it's very sort of transactional. He'll use it to say something to me because he's requesting, rather than having more of an
demand.
open conversation of it. It can be like getting him to make a choice of maybe where he wants to go or what food he wants.
Yeah.
But it's not
Something of interest to him.
Yeah, it's not really. I can't ask him like, "How's your day?"
I was going to say, could you say,
No,
did you have a good day? Yes or no? Then would he
I can
reply?
get a thumbs up.
Okay.
I get a because that's his.
That's a no.
Yeah,
I
he's
didn't.
not having a good day. But that can also be a sign of that he just doesn't want to talk.
Yeah, don't talk to me, Dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
But you know that the understanding's there because
Yeah,
he's
he
responding in
understands.
some sort of way.
I can talk to him about something and he will understand it. And yeah, because of his understanding of language, it's been so much easier.
Yeah.
Like I said with Jude, it's very simple, and we use objects of reference. I'll show him the car key, for instance, if we're going to go out in the car, and he understands that, and I'll say, "Oh, we're going to go in the car," and like really reinforce.
So that's where my daughter's at the moment.
Yeah.
She's at objects
of
reference.
Yeah.
Was it always like that with Jude as a young?
Yeah, I'd say
never progressed.
It's not progressed much. No, we've tried PECs, we've tried
Yeah.
AAC devices, we've tried lots of different
He's
things.
just not
with
been
him.
able to get on with
It's just
them.
not really. I mean, part of it is motivation. I think is also his motor skills aren't great, whereas Tommy's a lot more, a lot better at that. But then at the same time, he can navigate an iPad really well. So
Of course, because it's what he likes.
Still pushing on the AAC with him at school to try and but whether he consistently recognises the symbols and the words, and we've not sort of had that much success with it. But yeah,
How do you recognise when they're ready to use it? Like, how did you know that Tommy was ready to use the device, or that Jude wouldn't get on with the device?
So, I mean, they've both tried it at different stages. I think for Tommy at the time, we recognised it because he was using PECs quite well.
Okay.
But I wouldn't say that's a sort of prerequisite that
Yeah.
you need to. I think that it's worth trying. Like, I think a lot of parents are scared to try it, as in it will replace their voice.
No, I'm not worried about
And
that.
I think that is definitely not the case. I've seen lots of kids learn to speak through using it. Tommy's understanding of language has improved so much
From using
it because he's explored it. He's sat there, he's listened to words, he's pressed things, he's seen the pictures next to the words,
That's
and just in his
amazing.
own time gone through and he definitely, that's really helped him. And yeah, I just think I think it's just trying it, and a lot of it is modelling it, using it yourself, trying to show how to use it, asking questions, using it, rather than just sort of using it for them to reply.
Yeah. I mean, for me personally, it's always been, obviously, don't get me wrong, I would love to hear her little voice and have some sort of conversation with her. But for me, it's always been the understanding and the communication.
Yeah.
Like, there are other ways to communicate other than
Of course,
speech.
yeah.
And I'm fully on board with that. But it's the fact that there's no communication there, and that's what scares me the most.
Yeah.
That won't ever come.
And I'd say,
Just don't know.
Exactly. It's very like Tommy, I'd say, had sort of the first sort of real progression around 7.
Yeah. See, Bailey's still very young.
Definitely very young. And there was lots of worries before that. Lots of, is he going to speak? Is he going to be able to communicate well? And I'd say around 7, 8 is when the first sort of real surge of understanding. And you could see he was frustrated a lot before that because he wanted to, and he was really, he clearly had a lot to say
And that's what's so upsetting. The fact that they want to talk and they want to communicate, but they physically can't. I'm never going to get my head around that. I mean, it must feel like you sitting there listening to us must take you back years of the things that I've asked you off camera as well. Like, you must think, God, I thought of that. And like, that's how I used to think. And it's just so weird, isn't it? That you're somewhere
but
where...
also inspiring to see where you are.
Oh, gosh, 100%.
So far down the line, and
I
that they're
think
so
that's-
happy.
Yeah, that's the point, right? And that's what we all sort of learn. I've learned from so many families that we see it and realise you don't necessarily realise it at the time, but at the age of when your kids are now, of course, everything felt overwhelming, confusing. There's so much that you're in this race of so many things to try and do.
Yeah.
And I'd say, we've had some really difficult times, but life generally feels quite good now. Like it is, we've learnt so much about the boys, and what they need and what they like and what they, when to push them out of their comfort zone, when not to.
It's become more normal.
Yeah. And that's it. It is now. We've got 15 years of it, rather than 2 years of trying to figure out what autism is and what that means, and whether we can go to that party or whether we can't, or can we stay somewhere, can we go on holiday, all those different things that
where I am
you're in the very early stages of, and just over time the adaptations don't feel so big anymore.
I mean, I still feel like I'm in that stage of I don't know my daughter. I don't know her needs, her wants. I don't know what triggers her, what doesn't, what she likes, what she does. I don't know her.
Yeah.
Realistically, yes, she's 3 years old, nearly 4, but realistically, I've had 2 years, maybe 3, because as a baby, they're a baby anyway. But realistically, I've only known about it for not even 2 years. So I think I've still got a long way to go.
Yeah. And we do, and I'm still learning about the boys. They're changing. Puberty is a different thing.
And there's so many phases all the time with stuff, and you think you're never going to get out of that phase, and then it becomes such a memory, and then something new comes along. So the boys both got diagnosed quite early on, didn't they?
Yeah.
How old was Jude when he got diagnosed?
They were both under 2.
Yeah.
So it was very quick. I'd say within 6 months of going to the doctor.
I remember you saying even with the EHCP and everything, you were very fortunate.
And I actually caught myself, I've tried to stop myself saying fortunate because...
But you were.
We were in comparison to now.
Yeah.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean it's right.
No.
It's what we should all be expecting and receiving. The
100%.
same with school. I'm fortunate they've got into a SEND school and it's been the right place for them. But I wouldn't say that if it was a mainstream school. I wouldn't say I'm fortunate that
you're
my
right.
kid got into the school. So why do we say it?
No, you're so right.
With SEND?
Because unfortunately...
Because we're conditioned to see... I get so many people message me or come into the shop and stuff all the time about they've got no EHCP, they've been waiting years, they're on this list, there's no school place. And I hear it over and over and over again. So I go, I'm so lucky. But no, I've just got what
everyone should have.
People have had.
Yeah.
Exactly, it's what everyone should have.
Yeah.
So it's...
it's not that you're lucky.
No.
They just make it so difficult
don't get
for
wrong,
us.
At the same time, I'm extremely grateful because I know the alternative.
Yeah.
Well, the fight and the homeschooling whilst waiting.
Huge
and
fight.
Yeah.
We've, at the time, 6 months felt like forever waiting
Of course
for a
it did.
diagnosis.
I waited 2 years.
Yeah, which I know must drive people insane because it's incredibly long. And we waited 6 months without really knowing what it meant because Jude was, 14 months when we started the process. Didn't really know anything about autism. There was no real social media. There was no, other than...
You're showing your age.
Yeah, other than Google and a few professional medical articles.
It'll send you a leaflet to read.
Yeah, whereas now I feel like if you're waiting for that diagnosis,
you can do things before that.
You can, but it's also very overwhelming because you're looking at so much information and you don't know where to start, and it's a different path, and you've got 2 years, 3 years, and you're seeing all these other people fighting and battling, and
But I feel when it comes to the diagnosis, I mean, even though you waited 2 years,
you don't actually need the diagnosis to go forward for your EHCP or to do things now. And they are accepting private now because of the backlog of stuff. But I feel like today, in this day and age, but I feel like that because there are a lot of kids these days that are getting diagnosed with ADHD, autism, and, special needs, that you have more people out there that you can talk to, whether if you're waiting for an appointment, and especially with social media as well, you're always going to find that one person. Like I found Sophie.
Is that how you got
Well, we've known each other for years. We lived in the same road together when we were kids, but she's a little bit younger than me.
Showing your age now.
But
but we got back together.
We got back together because of a mutual friend. Because I didn't know anyone.
Yeah.
But
even though you had to wait 2 years, is what I was saying before. You said straight away, I know I'm going to have to wait, but I know my daughter's autistic. Yeah. I don't need for the paediatrician to say, in writing, she's got autism. You knew then, so it was kind of then what? Like we know that our kids have got special needs. Then what?
That's exactly what happened at the diagnosis appointment. By the time we got to the appointment, we knew he was autistic. Didn't really know what it meant.
So did you Google then?
Yeah, but still didn't really understand it. Or
Rain Man probably came up.
Rain Man was my only reference
to
autism back then. So we went through the appointment, sat at the end, they gave you the news, and it was like, okay, yeah, that's why we're here. So now what? And
They were like, bye.
yeah,
Yeah, they basically said
Because
to me,
I know this is really, really probably
but what can they do?
so negative to say, but I feel like any pediatrician, clinical psychologist, anything like that, yes, they're amazing at their jobs. But I believe, and I really hope this is not going to be negative, that it's so textbook that if you don't tick the textbook, then you either won't get a diagnosis or you do. But then what? That's where there's no support going on, especially with pediatrician doctors, because I feel like they don't know either, because every child is so different with their needs. It's the parent. We have to deal with it.
Yeah.
And learn.
Well, there's your answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I've answered it myself. But I'm saying I even went to the doctor and I said, I think Callie's showing OCD traits, and she was like, too young, come back in a few years. And it's like, well, so am I just going to keep this in my head for ages, or can I get any advice? And that's where I find it really challenging, that it just stops.
No, you have to go and find that yourself.
You have
basically.
to find that, and that's tough.
It is. And like I said, especially when you're in that sort of phase of being overwhelmed and anxious about the future and about what it means for...
It's not made easy for us,
no,
basically.
it's not. And at the time, we were told, obviously Jude was very young, so it was quite obvious that he was autistic, to them at least, to the professionals. And we were given a severe diagnosis, because that was a term used back then.
Yeah.
And then obviously that's scary of, well, what does that mean? Like, is he ever going to talk? We don't know. Is he ever going to, be independent? We don't know. And
that's what I find difficult. It's they don't know.
Yeah.
So
and they don't.
Of course they don't.
They don't, because I've seen so many people who have had that diagnosis and have spoken.
I know, or they get level 3, like when I follow people
That's
from
what keeps me
America and
going.
stuff, and then they're not at all. I went to a speech and language therapist, and she said, Callie's never going to talk. She talks.
Yeah.
So no one does know, and I think that's what is so difficult being a parent, is the unknown.
Yeah, because we have these expectations of milestones and what just will happen, because it's either happened to us, our friends, our family, the TV programs, the films, everything we're brought up on. We're used to that. At a certain age, you're going to walk, then you're going to talk, then you're going to make friends, then you go to school. Then, a little bit late. Jude was a crawler. He loved crawling, and it took a long time to walk. I'd say probably, again, that was a sign, not that we knew it was a sign of autism, but a sign of like not hitting milestones.
Can't remember, so long ago.
Yeah, before his appointment, he was walking, so for like 14 months, 15 months.
That's quite normal.
Is it?
Yeah.
Maybe it was later then. I don't know. I remember thinking, he crawled loads and he used the walker loads.
Yeah, but also some children with autism will, I watched a reel last night of an 8-month-old running and then woke up at 1 year old and was level 3, because it was American, like severely autistic, lost all their speech, everything. And it was like, so again, all these milestones, they can be met really, really early, and that's also a concern or a flag, or they're late.
Yeah. And I think that just shows how different everyone's experience is, right?
How did you feel, obviously, when Jude was diagnosed and then Charlotte fell pregnant? Was there always a worry that maybe...
Yeah, and I think
Tommy,
naturally there's a worry of, because we knew Jude was autistic before Tommy was born, and so I think that first year it does send you a little bit crazy of your over-analysing every...
And he pointed. That's what I was like.
He was autistic. He is autistic, but we definitely spent a lot of time sort of, oh, that's good, look, he did that, or oh no, he's not doing this, and really focusing and worrying about it. And not that it would have changed anything.
No,
but
of course
I know, but the worry that you gave yourself, I was in the same position,
Yeah.
making sure that he would give me eye contact, or he pointed, or he was engaged, or he ate and didn't gag with his food and making it up. But you just worry the whole time.
Yeah.
And it's really unfair.
Yeah. It definitely took away a bit of that fun and excitement of that first year. And, I wish I could go back and change that. But again, Tommy was diagnosed... Again, I think just before his second birthday, and that process felt just, again, normal then, because we knew who to ask, who to speak to.
Did it go through that trauma though for you, or?
I think after his diagnosis, I felt his one probably heavier, because I had 3 years of experience of Jude and knowing what that meant for Jude, and seeing, I think the meltdowns,
you knew what was to come.
Yeah, not necessarily that Tommy would be on the same path, but knowing that all the struggles Jude was having, and that, you know, now
He was gonna
Tommy
struggle too.
might go through all these things as well. And that, when Jude was diagnosed, we didn't really understand what it meant.
Yeah.
And then we had 3 years experience by the time Tommy was diagnosed. And it felt a lot scarier than when Jude was.
Do you still grieve the loss of not having a typical child? I know that's a hard question.
Yeah, no, but it's...
Because there must have been a grieving process.
Yeah, there is. I think we definitely grieved the life we expected.
Yeah.
We grieved the typical path that we expected. Our kids would go on, the things we'd do as families, that's completely normal. I'm very open about saying that.
Same.
I think definitely over time there's little things that come up that just, make you a bit down or a bit sad or angry, or however you process it is how you process it. And people take different amounts of time to process it as well. Some people, by the time they get a diagnosis, are just thankful and like relieved they have an answer and they're ready to go to battle and do everything.
Yeah.
And some people are distraught and worried. And that's, again, different people. So, I think there are still milestones that crop up that, like I said, last year was exams for Jude. I'm sure when it comes to Tommy, it'd be the same. And when they, school leaving ages and seeing people go to university and get jobs and, all those kinds of things. So there will be reminders.
Yeah, because obviously from a man's point of view, because we haven't had many men on and seeing it from their perspective, but like the football, for instance, or whatever your sport you love.
Go to the pub and having a pint together.
With your kids.
Like I definitely had that vision of we'd go to Arsenal together.
No, we don't talk about Arsenal in here. But yes, go on.
Touchy.
So we'd go to, that's what I do with my dad, and that's
what you've known,
and that's what I see my mates doing now. With their kids, and probably 10 years ago it really stung. Yeah, and now it's just a little reminder of
your acceptance seems a lot. Like you accept basically. I feel like you sit there and you're very like calm, cool, collective, and I feel like you've got a lot of acceptance around it. And I suppose that's because you're nearly 17 years down the line, whereas we're a lot not. And I still goes through my head like I'm not going to watch her dance, I'm not going to watch her do this.
Be in a school play, all the little things that we all grew up doing. But I think it's really refreshing to
100%.
hear your story because there's lots of us that are so early down there. And I know obviously you've accepted and said that there's always going to be struggles and there's lows, but the acceptance does come a lot more stronger than where we are. And I think that's where we should kindly end it on a really good note, because it's made us feel more reassured, hasn't it?
Well, yeah, I just feel like, sometimes not knowing kills me, but then also knowing maybe, because I don't know, I'm still working towards something. So, and I think by your story as well, that it just helps me get along. Yeah,
I think we're very thankful for your page as well. And
100%.
I know it was a benefit for you and therapy for you, but I don't think you know how many people you helped.
It was one of the first pages I ever followed a couple of years ago. And I don't, as Soph said, the amount of people that you help and just watching Jude and Tommy's story and like seeing similarities but differences, it's lovely to know I'm not alone.
Yeah,
basically.
That's exactly it.
And I think that's so important because we forget sometimes, like I, have lots of people message me and comment and stuff, and for me it's very evident I'm not alone. But for those people who don't have that, they don't realise. And exactly what you're saying about being at the early stage and not necessarily being, I wasn't. When Jude was 5, I was a mess. And people say like, oh, how can I be more? I'm like, it's just time. Like for me, it really is just time. There wasn't anything magical I did. I didn't like have a sort of realization moment that everything clicked, and it was just over time, gradually, you learn and you start to adjust and it becomes more normal.
Yeah. So
fantastic.
Time
is a great healer.
It is.
Thank you so much, James.
Thank you, James.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.